Hello and welcome back to Field Study, an exploration of food and the landscape. This is Forager's Table. Coming up today, I'm going to be out and about foraging for some wild garlic and then showing you guys one of the oldest tricks in the book to preserve it. And then we're going to come back here and I'm going to show you a killer vegan pasta recipe that's going to knock your socks off. Stay tuned. Today I'm going to be showing you one of the most simple and ancient preservation techniques out there to help you take this spring abundance that we've got now and preserve it for a little bit later on in the year. Oof, that's wet. That is a wet log. So the ancient preservation technique that I'm going to talk you through in this video is lacto-fermentation. Now this is a preservation technique that is as old as humanity. It's one of the earliest ones that we have. It predates refrigeration, all of that. It truly is ancient. And it's a way of preserving food for extended periods of time. Now lacto-fermentation, to put it simply, is using the bacteria that exists all around us in order to preserve food. Now everything on the face of the planet is covered in bacteria. And there are a group of these bacteria called lactobacillus. And they're also branded good bacteria by some people. They're the gut healthy bacteria that are in Yakult and kimchi and all of those good things. And they exist naturally on pretty much everything around us. And these little guys are the bacteria that we are interested in. So they will start to break down any food that they come into contact with, and they will give off lactic acid. And this acid then preserves the food by making it uninhabitable for other microbes. So it's sort of a way of using bacteria to pickle vegetables. It is absolutely fascinating. How we discovered it, I do not know. It also makes things taste fantastic. So lacto-fermented vegetables have got sort of a funkiness to them. They've got a little bit of a tanginess to them. And it is just a fantastic way to eat food and very, very healthy for you as well. So without any further ado, let's get into the recipe. It is one of the most simple recipes out there. It only has 2 ingredients, which are salt and thyme. So come with me and I'll show you how it's done. To learn how to safely identify wild garlic and to tell it apart from some toxic species, please click on the link in the description below. And whilst you're there, why not check out the reading list for more resources and further information about foraging. Remember, always make sure you're 100% confident in your identification before consuming any wild plant. So to preserve the colony, we only ever pick 1 or 2 leaves from each clump. And it's not difficult because this colony is absolutely huge. I think it probably stretches over 2 miles, this particular colony. It's really abundant here. So remember when you're out foraging to pick mindfully, leaf by leaf, paying attention to what you're picking and keeping in mind all the time those toxic lookalikes, which are lords and ladies and lily of the valley. So I can tell that this is wild garlic purely because of the smell. One of the main things about wild garlic is when you crush it up in your leaves and damage the cell membranes, like most onions, it gives out a heady smell of onion and garlic. And it is beautiful. It is unmistakable as well. Wild garlic really smells like garlic. So if you've found a plant and you've crushed it and you think it might be, but you're not really sure, trust me, it probably isn't wild garlic because this stuff whacks you around the face. Beautiful. So step number 1 is to start to break down your wild garlic leaves. You can use a knife, I'm just tearing them here, and then pop them in a glass jar or whatever container you're going to do your fermentation in. Now this is where the magic happens. So once you've torn it all into shreds and added it to your jar, it's time to add the salt. My hands are green. Now, the salt is what keeps you safe. So most microbes, including the ones that can make you ill or sick, do not like salt. So any sort of salinity and they will die. However, lactobacillus, the ones that we want to cultivate in our fermenting jar, they don't mind a little bit of salt. So there's always a rough percentage of salt that you should stick to with your ferments in order to keep you safe, to exclude all of the bad microbes and just focus in on those lactobacillus that we really want. And that is 2%. So you want to add 2% by weight of salt to your green vegetables or whatever it is that you're fermenting. Now, I don't have any weighing scales out here, so I don't know how much this weighs, but I'm a little bit haphazard when it comes to fermentation. I sort of do it by eye. I've been doing it for a number of years now, so I sort of know the rough amount to put in, and it always works out fine. But when you're at home, you can be more exact and keep on the safe side. So get your weighing scales out. First, weigh the thing that you're going to ferment, and then weigh the salt. So you want 2%. So once you've added your salt, this is where it gets a little bit more hands-on. So you've got to massage the salt into the leaf matter. So get your hand right in there and start squidging and scrunching and really force that salt into the leaves. Now this will do two things. It will help break down the outer surface layer of the leaf to let the salt get to it, and it will also distribute the salt nicely all the way through the mixture, which is good. And now we wait. So this is the point. If you want to add any other flavorings into here, some lovely dried chili flakes, something like that. You can add other wild edibles. You can add nettles, ground ivy, whatever takes your fancy. You can add them all into here to ferment with it and give it a little bit of extra flavor. But I'll get back to you in a couple of days when fermentation is well and truly underway. So we are back here at Field Study HQ, and it has been 2 weeks, and this is the wild garlic that we picked. It's been fermenting away really, really nicely in my kitchen, which is a nice temperature, and it has broken down really, really lovely. So you'll see that the leaves have started to soften and break down and sort of go into these lovely green stringy things, and it's given out a lot of its juice. Now that juice is absolute dynamite. It's an ingredient of its own, and it's an absolutely fantastic thing to use in your cookery, and we're going to be using a little bit of it today. So remember, as this ferments, those little microbes will be giving off CO2 gas, which has nowhere to escape if you do it in a jar like this. So every day, wake up in the morning and you just got to pop the top like that, and that will just release the gas, and you won't end up with an exploding jar, which isn't fun for anyone. Lacto-fermented foods have many, many health benefits, and the more we understand about our gut microbiome, the more that we're understanding that bacteria plays a role in our digestion, our well-being, even our mental health. So fermented foods like this, or like kimchi, which is another lacto-fermented product, are very, very good for us as human beings. But what this also is a fantastic ingredient. That fermentation really adds to the complexity of the vegetable. So what it does is it starts to break down some of the sugars in there, and as it ferments, the acidity level, as those bacteria give off lactic acid, will slightly rise, and it will give it a lovely tangy, funky sort of flavour. I've got jars of lacto-fermented wild garlic buds from last year, and if you go back to one of my first ever videos, I showed you how to make a sort of seasoning powder using the lacto-fermented wild garlic buds and dehydrating them. So I'll put a link up to that in the top corner. I have blitzed it down into a paste using my trusty stick blender. Now this is a killer ingredient. So this paste here, you can put it on a piece of meat before you roast it. You can put a teaspoon of it in some olive oil and then toss some lovely asparagus tips in it at this time of year. Beautiful. Very, very versatile and very, very delicious. We're going to make one of the simplest types of pasta that you can. And this is a home style pasta, and it doesn't use any egg. So this is vegan friendly. If you're cooking for anyone that you know that's vegan, they can eat this pasta, and it's fantastic. And it's also super quick to make. This is a weekday meal. You can get home from work, you can make this, and it isn't going to take you too long. And it's a good way of getting wild greens into your diet. So first we add about 300 grams of pasta flour or plain flour into a bowl like this. So that's roughly like a mug and a half sort of thing. Mug and a half, 2 mugs, that sort of thing. You can always adjust the dough a little bit later on. So we start off with that and we make a lovely little well in the middle. Now traditionally, if you're making an egg pasta, this is where you would crack your egg. But instead, we are going to add our lovely wild garlic paste. So the wild garlic paste acts as our wet ingredient. So just spoon a few tablespoons of that into the middle. So this is all of our liquid, and it's going to act as our binder in order to make this into a dough. So I usually put in about the size of like a large egg sort of thing, and we'll start off with that. We can always add more as we go along. Now, if you work this into each other and just start to work the wet ingredient into the flour, it will just start to come together into a dough. So keep on working the dough until it is a nice smooth consistency and it has a little bit of spring and bounce to it. Now the dough shouldn't be too wet that it's sort of tacky on the outside. It should sort of hold together in a nice firm form sort of thing. Like I said, just adjust it as you go along, add a little bit more flour if it's too wet, and add a little bit more of the wild garlic paste if it's a little bit too dry. So in order to speed this up and save yourself all of this work, you can do this all in a food processor, which will mix it all up and sort of knead it for you. But sometimes it's just nice to get hands-on with your cooking, if you know what I mean. So there we go, that is our beautiful little ball of pasta dough. Time for the fun bit, shaping your pasta. Now I like to do long, thin sort of snakes. You could do them in little indented ear shapes. You could go all out and use a pasta roller and make like a long sheet and make tagliatelle with it. Possibilities are endless. Throw some flour down and let your imagination take hold. Throw your pasta into a pan of lightly salted boiling water and it should take 5 to 8 minutes to cook. Serve it with your favourite pesto or a simple tomato sauce and you're on to a winner. Is it the most attractive plate of food we've ever made? No. Does it sort of look like a bunch of dead green snakes on a plate? Yes. However, if you know, you know. This is my kind of cooking. It is rustic, it is quick, and it is easy to do, so you can incorporate wild food that's good for you any day of the week. Cheers. Holy cow, that is good. You really need to try this. So once again, thank you very much for joining me this week. If you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button and click subscribe for more foraging videos and recipes from this beautiful landscape. Until next week, take care.